from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the following is provided by the West Virginia Department of Education and West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Hey everyone, it's Education Station, the show where we invite teachers from all across West Virginia to submit videos of themselves teaching their favorite lessons. In today's episode, we've got a science lesson about the desert, a funny story about a squirrel, and a read aloud about kindness. Well, hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Alex Milanese, and we're kicking off today's episode with a field trip to Joshua Tree National Park. Miss Sinisi is going to share with us a lesson about the desert. Let's check it out.
This is just a little brief history of the Joshua Tree, which goes along with some pictures that I will show you from Joshua Tree National Park. But if you're wondering, how did they get that name? Why is that called the Joshua Tree, right? So there were a group of Mormon settlers that were traveling across the Mojave Desert, which is where Joshua Tree is, in the Mojave Desert, in the mid-19th century. And they saw these trees, which are large, you'll see from the pictures, large kind of cacti representing trees, but they have a unique shape, and at the top they have outstretched branches like a regular tree, but that is said to remind the Mormons of a biblical story in which Joshua reaches his hands up into the sky to pray. So they thought that the trees looked like that, represented that, so they called them the Joshua trees. There was a mass Mormon migration along that Spanish Trail, and so there were a lot of Mormons that were coming through there, and that ended in the mid-1800s. We have the guy called Brigham Young, and he was kind of the founder, and he called the settlers back to Salt Lake City, Utah. That's where the Utah War started. So we also see, if you read the literature about it, it's called a yucca palm, right? So the Joshua tree is also called a yucca palm tree, right? So we want to look at, we've looked at a lot of things in Joshua Tree. We've looked at some of the animals, we'll look at the plants, we've looked at what's going on, but we're going to look at the desert biome as a whole. But before we do that, let's just define a biome. Biome means life, right? Living things. So it's a large naturally occurring community of flora, that's plants, and fauna, that's animals. Those are just old names for those. And they occupy a major habitat. Our example this time is the desert biome. The desert biome covers about 1/5 of the Earth's surface, which is a pretty large amount. The soil can either be sandy, like the beach, when you go to the beach, or little pebbles, gravelly or stony, depending on the type of desert that you're in. Let's just look at a few characteristics of the desert. Each biome will have different characteristics, different plants, different animals, and we'll explore those. There's very little rainfall, less than about 50 centimeters a year in the desert, right? I'm sure you've watched things on TV that talk about that. The temperatures vary greatly between day and night. It can get very, very hot during the day, but very cool at night. There isn't much vegetation there to hold in the heat, right? High evaporation rates. So if it's very hot during the day and it does rain or there is any water, it evaporates quickly because there's so much. And remember, I told you that warm air holds more moisture, so all of that moisture is going to go up into the air. It has coarse textured soils, like we talked about, sand, gravel, stone, and it has drought-resistant vegetation. If you want to know more about that, you can look back at our CAM plants and C4 plant video to find out a little bit about those types of plants in the desert. Here's 5 interesting facts about the desert. You may not have known this, but Antarctica is a huge ice desert. It fits all of the categoristics and characteristics of being a desert. People do live in the deserts. It's not very habitable, right? It's hot, not very much rain, not a lot of stuff grows there, but people do live there. Desert plants store water, and we're going to look at that in a minute. Animals come out at night. If you think about it, if it was super, super hot, you might not want to be out during the day. Same with an animal. So they like to come out at night. And the weather is different for every desert, right? Antarctica is an ice desert. We've talked about the Mojave Desert, which is a sandy desert, right? Types of animals that live in the desert, and there are some pictures that I will incorporate. My husband and I saw a desert fox kind of sunning itself on a log. We saw a snake. We saw some rabbits. We saw a lot of lizards and geckos, not very many toads, no camels because we're not that type of desert. Spiders, meerkats, all different kind of animals like that live in the desert. Plants in the desert. Cacti have enlarged stems to store water, right? A cactus has a very large stem because we have to have that water, as well as those spines. That's what everybody thinks of when they see a cactus, those little prickly spines that stick out. And those protect the water reserves from thirsty animals. So that's what's called an adaptation. Adaptations are evolutionary mechanisms that allow survival. So if you think about it and you're a cactus and you're storing all your water in these large stems, you don't want animals to come by and take your water. So those spines or those prickly on the cacti help to prevent animals from coming through and drinking the water out of the cacti. Who wants to get a mouthful of spines, right? And another adaptation we looked at, we were talking about the animals here, are the jackrabbits. Have you ever seen a jackrabbit? There's a picture of one after this video. But they have really long ears. And the reason they have those long ears, because they can transfer all the excess heat from their body to those ears and out into the air, which would keep their body cooler. That's also an evolutionary adaptation, right? A mechanism which helps them to be able to survive.
Thanks, Miss Sinisi. All right, now I'm sure we've all heard the expression scaredy cat when someone's afraid to do something. But our next story from Mrs. Milanese is about a scaredy squirrel. Let's check it out.
Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Milanese, and today I'm going to be reading you a story. I found this story on an app called Epic. Epic is a free app that you can download onto a phone, tablet, or iPad, and there are tons of stories to choose from. I chose a really cool one for us today, so let's check it out. This book is called Scaredy Squirrel. It's written by Melanie Watt and illustrated by Melanie Watt. Warning: Scaredy Squirrel insists that everyone wash their hands with antibacterial soap before reading this book. Scaredy Squirrel. Scaredy Squirrel never leaves his nut tree. The unknown. He'd rather stay in a safe, familiar tree than risk venturing out into the unknown. The unknown can be a scary place for a squirrel. A few things Scaredy Squirrel is afraid of: green Martians, killer bees, tarantulas, poison ivy, germs, and sharks. So he's perfectly happy to stay right where he is. The advantages of never leaving the nut tree: great view, plenty of nuts, safe place, and no tarantulas, poison ivy, green Martians, bees, germs, or sharks. Disadvantages of never leaving the nut tree: the same old view, the same old nuts, and the same old place. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, in Scaredy Squirrel's nut tree, every day is the same. Everything is predictable, and all is under control. Scaredy Squirrel's daily routine. 6:45 a.m., wake up. 7 a.m., eat a nut. 7:15, look at the view. Noon, eat a nut. 12:30, look at the view. 5 p.m., eat a nut. 5:31, look at the view. And 8 p.m., go to sleep. Boy, that doesn't sound very fun, does it? But But let's say, just for example, that something unexpected did happen. You can rest assured that this squirrel is prepared. A few items in Scaredy Squirrel's emergency kit. A parachute, bug spray, masks and rubber gloves, a hard hat, antibacterial soap, calamine lotion, net, a Band-Aid, and some sardines. What to do in case of an emergency, according to Scaredy Squirrel. Step 1, panic. Step 2, run. Step 3, get the kit. Step 4, put on kit. Step 5, consult exit plan. And step 6, exit tree if there is absolutely definitely no other option. The exit plan is this. It's top secret. Exit 1, note to self, watch out for green Martians and killer bees in the sky. Exit 2, note to self, do not land in the river. If avoidable, use the sardines to distract the sharks. Exit 3, note to self, look out for poison ivy and for tarantulas roaming the ground. And step 4, note to self, keep in mind that germs are everywhere. Remember, if all else fails, playing dead is always a good option. Boy, he's a really nervous squirrel, isn't he? With his emergency kit in hand, Scaredy Squirrel watches. Day after day, he watches until one day, Thursday, 9:37 a.m. A killer bee appears. Scaredy Squirrel jumps in panic, knocking his emergency kit out of the tree. This was not part of the plan. Scaredy Squirrel jumps to catch his kit. He quickly regrets this idea. The parachute is in the kit. But something incredible happens. He starts to glide. Scaredy Squirrel is no ordinary squirrel. He is a flying squirrel. He feels overjoyed and adventurous. Scaredy Squirrel forgets all about the killer bee, not to mention the tarantulas, poison ivy, green Martians, germs, and sharks. He feels carefree, alive, until he lands in a bush and plays dead. 30 minutes later, 1 hour later, 2 hours later, finally, Scaredy Squirrel realizes that nothing is happening in the unknown today. So he returns to his nut tree. All this excitement has inspired Scaredy Squirrel to make drastic changes to his life. Scaredy Squirrel's new and improved daily routine. 6:45 a.m., wake up. 7, eat a nut. 7:15, look at the view. 9:37, jump into the unknown. 9:45, play dead. 11:45, return home. At noon, he eats a nut. At 12:30, look at the view. At 5, eat a nut. And at 5:31, look at the view. And then at 8 p.m., go to sleep. So see there, he added jump into the unknown and play dead for a few hours. P.S. As for the emergency kit, Scaredy Squirrel's in no hurry to pick it up just yet. The end.
Thanks, Mrs. Milanese. Now, for our final segment today, Mr. Johnson is going to share with us a classic piece of American literature. He's going to read a short story called Thank You, Ma'am. Let's check it out.
I'm Bob Johnson. I'm with Nicholas County chapter of Read Aloud, West Virginia, and I also teach in the Save the Children After School program. I will be reading for Black History Month a selection by Langston Hughes. and it's entitled, "Thank You, Ma'am." She was a large woman with a large purse that had everything in it but hammer and nails. It had a long strap, and she carried it slung across her shoulder. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and she was walking alone when a boy ran up behind her and tried to snatch her purse. The strap broke with the single tug the boy gave it from behind, but the boy's weight and the weight of the purse combined caused him to lose his balance, so instead of taking off full blast, as he had hoped, the boy fell on his back on the sidewalk and his legs flew up. The large woman simply turned around and kicked him right square in his blue-jeaned sitter. Then she reached down, picked the boy up by his shirt front, and shook him until his teeth rattled. After that, the woman said, "Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here." She still held him, but she bent down enough to permit him to stoop and pick up her purse. Then she said, "Now ain't you ashamed of yourself?" Firmly gripped by his shirt front, the boy said, "Yes'm." The woman said, "What did you want it for?" The boy said, "I didn't aim to." And she said, "You a lie." By that time, 2 or 3 people passed, stopped, turned to look, and some stood watching. "If I turn you loose, will you run?" asked the woman. "Yes'm," said the boy. "Then I won't turn you loose," said the woman. She did not release him. "I'm very sorry, lady, I'm sorry," whispered the boy. "Uh-huh, and your face is dirty. I got a great mind to wash your face for you. Ain't you got nobody home to tell you wash your face?" "No," said the boy. "Then it will get washed this evening," said the large woman, staring up the street, dragging the frightened boy behind her. He looked as if he were 14 or 15, frail and willow wild, in tennis shoes and blue jeans. The woman said, "You ought to be my son. I would teach you right from wrong. Least I can do right now is to wash your face. Are you hungry?" "No," said the being dragged boy. "I just want you to turn me loose." "Was I bothering you when I turned that corner?" asked the woman. "No." "But you put yourself in contact with me," said the woman. "If you think that that contact is not going to last a while, you got another thought coming. When I get through with you, sir, you are going to remember Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones." Sweat popped out on the boy's face, and he began to struggle. Mrs. Jones stopped, jerked him around in front of her, put a half Nelson about his neck, and continued to drag him up the street. When she got to her door, she dragged the boy inside, down a hall, and into a large kitchenette-furnished room at the rear of the house. She switched on the light and left the door open. The boy could hear other roomers laughing and talking in the large house. Some of their doors were open too, So he knew he and the woman were not alone. The woman still had him by the neck in the middle of her room. She said, "What is your name?" "Roger," answered the boy. "Then, Roger, you go to that sink and wash your face," said the woman, whereupon she turned him loose at last. Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. "Let the water run until it gets warm," she said. "Here's a clean towel." "You going to take me to jail?" asked the boy, bending over the sink. "Not with that face. I would not take you nowhere," said the woman. "Here I am trying to get home to cook me a bite to eat, and you snatch my pocketbook. Maybe you ain't been to your supper either, late as it be, have you?" "There's nobody home at my house," said the boy. "Then we'll eat," said the woman. "I believe you're hungry, or been hungry, to try to snatch my pocketbook." "I wanted a pair of blue suede shoes," said the boy. "Well, you didn't have to snatch my pocketbook to get some suede shoes," said Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones. "You could have asked me." "Ma'am?" The water dripping from his face, the boy looked at her. There was a long pause, a very long pause. After he had dried his face, and not knowing what else to do, dried it again. The boy turned around wondering, what next? The door was open. He could make a dash for it down the hall. He could run, 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 run. The woman sitting on the daybed. After a while, she said, "I were young once, and I wanted things I could not get." There was another long pause. The boy's mouth opened. Then he frowned, but not knowing, he frowned. The woman said, "Uh-huh. You thought I was going to say, 'but,' didn't you? You thought I was going to say, 'but I didn't snatch people's pocketbooks.' Well, I wasn't going to say that." Pause. Silence. "I have done things too which I would not tell you, son. Neither tell God if he didn't already know. So you sit down while I fix us something to eat. You might run that comb through your hair so you will look presentable." In another corner of the room behind a screen was a gas plate and an icebox. Mrs. Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which she had left behind on the daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye, if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. "Do you need somebody to go to the store?" asked the boy. "Maybe to get some milk or something?" "Don't believe I do," said the woman, "unless you just want sweet milk yourself. I was going to make cocoa out of this canned milk I got here." "That will be fine," said the boy. She heated some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived, or his folks, or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in a hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and Spanish. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. "Eat some more, son," she said. When they were finished eating, she got up and said, "Now here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook nor anybody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet." I got to get my rest now, but I wish you would believe yourself, son, or rather behave yourself, son, from here on in. She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. "Good night. Behave yourself, boy," she said, looking out onto the street. The boy wanted to say something else other than "Thank you, ma'am," to Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so. As he turned at the barren stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door, he barely managed to say, "Thank you," before she shut the door. And he never saw her again.
Thanks, Mr. Johnson. All right, well, that wraps up everything for us here today on Education Station. We want to thank everyone who shared their awesome lessons, and we want to thank you for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Education Station.